Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Andrea Giraldo. Welcome to Meetings of the Minds, brought to you by the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in partnership with BronxNet. Today's show was created in direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic as a way to highlight the work of our members and partners, as well as to understand the resources they have to help our community in those difficult times. Today, we'll be doing part 2 of a special roundtable discussion on real estate in New York State in 2024. This will be hosted by Gregory Sigarnis, the real estate chairman for the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Joining him for today's discussion are Linda Fernandez, CEO of Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, and Carmen Baumann, president of the Hudson Gateway Association. We hope you enjoyed this great discussion. Greg, take it away.
Hello and welcome. First of all, thank you, Andrea, for that great introduction, and always thank you, Nick, Lugo, and Cindy, and everyone at the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Today, we truly have special guests. We have two women that have risen to powerful positions in HGAR, which is the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. There's a saying, if you want the job right, give it to a woman. So I think we're in good hands. All right. So tell us a little bit about the organization, HGAR, which is, once again, is the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. Which of you two wants to tackle that introduction for the organization?
Linda's our CEO.
So the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors has been, through a series of mergers, has been in existence for over 100 years. We have 13,000 members in the Hudson Gateway area. We cover Westchester, Putnam, Orange County, Rockland, the Bronx, and have jurisdiction in New York City. And we offer everything that a realtor needs to be successful in their business. So our main core services are advocacy, professional development or education, and engagement. And so we are committed to our members and our leadership. Carmen is our chief leader for 2024, and we're just committed to empowering our members to best serve their clients. And through advocacy, we are committed to protecting the American dream of homeownership, protecting property rights, and helping consumers build wealth, generational wealth.
Okay, so you're the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, and Carmen, you are the President.
Correct. Yep.
All right, and one thing you mentioned is that you do a lot of advocacy work. All right, so I'm going to go into one of the recent wins that you did, and I'm also going to tie that into veterans, because veterans are a very important part of our society. As a Latina, I also have heard and have been told that a large percentage of our military, our veterans, are Latino and Latina. So you went out there and you fought for veterans, and one of the things you fought for was changing the law where if you get a VA loan, that basically they're not barred from paying a broker's fee. So now this is kind of a tricky situation here, because why was this legislation needed? So since you're the advocate for what transpired and was a victory for the veterans, can you give us a little background and your thoughts on the legislation, why it was important?
Right. So there's the three-way agreement. So there's the National Association of Realtors. When a member joins the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, they also join the State Association, the New York Association of Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors. And we do advocacy on all three levels. And so there was a lawsuit that was recently settled by the National Association of Realtors. And as part of that settlement, there can't be offers of compensation in the MLS, and there must be a written buyer agreement when a realtor works with a client. As a result, of the settlement, the listing agent can share their commission with the broker agent, but in many cases, or in some cases, the buyer agent may not, the seller agent may not do that, and the buyer agent has to compensate their agent directly. The VA loan prohibited their buyers from paying that commission, and so that was going to be a huge obstacle moving forward when we implement the settlement.
Okay, so now you're also not only a commercial broker for R.N. Friedland, but
Correct.
you also have a division of residential brokerage working out of the Keller Williams White Plains office.
Yes,
So
correct.
what's your input on how this is all shifting and how things are changing in relation to this legislation?
Sure. Let me just tag on quick about the VA loan. The way that if it were to be allowed, it's currently paused. So VA, if you are an applicant for a VA loan, you can compensate your buyer's agent. Your buyer's agent can be compensated. So with the prohibition in place, if that were to have passed, you would have to choose from either not obtaining a VA loan, and in many cases, that individual would not be able to even purchase a home, or compensate the buyer's agent, and also that person may not be able to do something like that.
Now, I kind of look at it as a potential collateral damage, meaning that and if anyone who doesn't know, there's different types of loans, and there's a VA loan, there's an FHA loan, there's a Sonny Mae loan, there's a conventional loan, there's a no-doc loan. And as a real estate broker, I am a real estate broker. I've been a member of Hagar for almost 20 years now, and I also am part of the leadership of the Bronx
Advisory Council.
Right, the advisory council.
Greg, we don't say Hagar, we HG.
I'm sorry,
There you go.
HG.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. All right, but it's almost counterintuitive is that now we have to basically pass legislation in order to make veterans pay. But if they weren't allowed to basically get offer a buyer's compensation, they wouldn't be represented.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of times, you know, there is major legislation out there that has the potential to have a big effect on the real estate world. I enjoy being in a cooperative situation where when I get a listing, I share a portion of my commission with the other broker so that the other side is represented, right? And basically, first-time home buyers, and you know, they don't have to come out of pocket for that additional 2% or 3%.
When the listing agent shares our commission.
Right. You know, so I just want to get your perspective on that, because I think
Sure.
my perspective is that in some way we're making it more difficult, on top of the mortgage tax, on top of all the other expenses of becoming a home buyer. Now, to be represented, you need to basically pay an additional fee.
So I'd like to clarify what I believe it's always been from my perspective, which is the buyer has always paid. It has always been a shared expense. It does not present that way because the seller is the one that is in contract with the owner of the home. However, at the closing table, where does your commission check come from? It comes from the buyer's loan, right? That is rolled into their mortgage. The commission is paid out of the buyer's mortgage. That concept in and of itself should show you that it's always been a shared expense. So it's unfortunate that NAR, for legal reasons, had to settle the lawsuit, and this is the approach that is best for the association as a whole, for the National Association, the state associations, as well as each of our local associations. And now it is unclear for a buyer's agent whether or not the seller will be compensating them as part of the sales agreement.
Okay, did you want to add anything on to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree with what Carmen said, but also wanted to emphasize that with the settlement, which was the best path forward, NAR did not admit any wrongdoing. Because there was no wrongdoing, commissions were already negotiable. And so I just want to emphasize that they remain negotiable as they have been. But this is one of the things that we have to implement as a result of that settlement. And I agree with you that it will disproportionately negatively impact those that are more vulnerable, that have lower income or are first-time buyers.
I mean, it's a very drastic change. There's a lot of ambiguity out there. Are we going to start seeing, you know, I mean, I personally love the way it worked, because when you got the listing, it was basically you representing the seller, and your circle was greatly expanded by the smart concept of, let me share my commission and put it out to the 13,000 other brokers. And that would in turn open up the market greatly. It's not just myself selling. It's not just the 125, 50 agents in my office. It's 13,000 agents amongst an MLS. It's a very important it's a very important decision. And now, what's the timeline? Like, what's the timeline? And I really there is some ambiguity out there. So, is there any additional clarity you want to give to us? Like, how is a person who can barely scrape the 3.5% to get an FHA loan going to now be able to be represented by paying a broker's fee to a buyer's agent rather than having it baked into the listing agreement and it being part of the loan that they're taking out?
Well, I mean, I agree that, again, it is going to negatively impact those who may not have that fee if the seller does not authorize their agent to share their commission. But I do think overall, we will be okay and we will navigate this and we will make it work. But I wanted to correct the fact that it's not just 13,000 members, because the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors is the parent company along with Long Island Association of the One Key MLS. It's actually 50,000 members or subscribers, and that shows you the way that the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, the Realtor Association industry, has worked to be pro-consumer for that very reason, to be competitive, to give more opportunity to buyers, and to be more inclusive.
One thing I do want to make clear is that we're not a landlord organization. The purpose of an MLS is for a free market in order for a buyer and a seller to meet. That's my understanding of it. And you also mentioned the affiliate organizations. You have RPAC, which you have multicultural organizations that are associated with you. You have the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. You have the Asian Real Estate Association of America, National Association Real Estate Brokers, and a whole list of other organizations that you work with and you promote. So I think we built a really effective system, and I hope that it continues to go forward. So the next topic that's a very big topic that's on a lot of people's minds is good cause eviction. Do either of you, now I know that you were an attorney, you had an attorney background, which of you want to tackle what good cause eviction is? I could go down the list also, or just what your feelings are on it.
Sure. Do you mind if I circle back really quick?
Yes,
just on,
you can circle back anytime you
okay,
want.
Thank you. To Linda's point earlier, while there is some lack of clarity that is just from people not knowing where to look for the information, there's not a ton of ambiguity. Things are pretty clear, and that's not just because I'm a recovering attorney. But now is more than ever is the time for realtors to lean into their association and to tap into those resources that we do provide, whether it's advocacy, professional development, education, or the communication that we have with our members and the engagement that we want to provide to our members.
So you mentioned education. Mm-hmm. So in order to have a proper real estate market, you need professionals out there who are well educated.
Right.
And in order to renew your license, in order to go forward in this industry, you have CEE classes, professional educational classes. So once you become a member, you also have access to all these CE classes. And it's a great source not only for networking, selling properties, putting the property on the MLS so everyone has access to it, but also for educating so that we have professional realtors and brokers out there representing the public.
Right, and there's continuing education that's required by the state, but there are plenty of very informative and helpful educational classes that HGAR and other affiliate associations put on that benefit real estate agents. Across the board, not just realtors.
Yeah,
right.
I don't fully understand when someone becomes an agent but they don't join the MLS, because the power of opening up a listing, a listing is a property for sale up to 13,000 members, really is what makes a broker, in addition to all the knowledge he brings to the table, a valuable asset to someone selling their property.
And also just to point out that realtors also subscribe to a code of ethics that differentiates them from another licensed real estate agent.
Okay. All right, so going back to good cause eviction, because this is something that is a very hot topic right now. There was a debate that I had saw, and we do have some elected officials who believe that capping rents is the answer in order to solve the housing crisis. I'm not an advocate of it. What's the position of HGAR, And do you want to give us any insight into the legislation that's presently, I believe it was passed recently?
It was passed, and I'm going to let Carmen comment on that and give her anecdotal experience. But I just wanted to point out that, we've been in a housing crisis and shortage for many years because of, insufficient housing starts, insufficient supply. That is what's driving up home prices. And so anything that we advocate for right now is to increase inventory. And so from our perspective, legislation like this is not helping.
So my personal opinion, which is I'm sure in line with HGAR, good cause eviction is absolutely a misnomer. In the state of New York, you could never evict a tenant without good cause. If you were my tenant, I could not say, hey, Greg, I don't like you anymore, please leave, right? That's just not how it works. I would, go ahead.
No, go.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, go, finish, please.
So there has always been good cause eviction within this state. The bill, the legislation that passed called good cause eviction actually allows a kind of almost permanent residency. There are requirements for lease renewals for landlords, and as you mentioned earlier, we are not a landlord association. That is not who we represent. We represent real estate agents. We represent property rights, home ownership, American dream. That's what we stand for, and good cause eviction does not help any of that.
So basically, I always advocate for the person trying to buy a home. And they did pass good cause eviction, but to the present law that was passed, I believe it's only for units, 10 units and up. Is that correct?
Correct, and it also applies only within the city limits. So outside of the city, they would have to opt in to good cause eviction. But once it's passed in the city, it's very possible that people will tack on and so on.
But now outside of the city, they can opt in. So there are
Correct.
various cities. I mean, Kingston is one of the cities where they opted in. And part of the legislation now is that you cannot increase rents more than 10%. Right?
Yeah.
They're capping the rent. So basically, according to this website, dramatically impacts the rights and obligations of landlords and tenants in New York by limiting evictions, requiring lease renewals, and capping rent increases for the market rate apartments in New York City. So I'm sure a lot of people will say, we need to cap rents. But there's also the negative effect of, for example, we talked about in the first series of we have between 60 and 80,000 apartments in rent stabilized buildings that are vacant because the landlords, based on that law, you can only recoup, I believe, $15,000 over a 10-year period, but you're required to make 50, 80, sometimes $100,000 to bring an apartment up to code. And that's where the vacancy reset bill that people are fighting for are trying to push. But it seems like now they're bringing it into the lower unit numbers. And originally they actually wanted to bring it down to 2s and 3s, which for me is like, your parents' house, your house. Now the government's going to be telling you what your rent is going to be, and it's people don't know that when you have a rent stabilized building or rent stabilized properties, the paperwork is very intensive. So it's something that, how is it really the answer to solving the problems? It says non-payment of rent unless the rent is unreasonable. So now the judge is going to determine whether the rent is unreasonable. It just makes it more difficult to evict a difficult tenant. And it seems like we're going to overburden an already overburdened court. So is there anything else you want to add or anything else you want to discuss about good cause eviction that you think is pertinent?
To Linda's point earlier with respect to inventory shortage, it certainly doesn't help that. As you mentioned, there are landlords that are holding units vacant because it literally does not pay. They are not landlords to lose money. I don't think that's a concept that everyone would agree to. And they would love to, many of the landlords that I know would love to make renovations and make the units nicer, but they can't based on the guidelines and the laws that are currently in place.
Again, there are reasons why you can't evict someone: being a nuisance, malicious or grossly negligent, substantial damage to the premises of building, occupancy is unlawful, illegal use of premises. All right, but the point is that it's.
But those causes already existed. Those were reasons that you could have evicted a tenant. for.
When it takes a year and a half in order to get someone evicted presently, having another barrier like this, I believe, is detrimental to real property rights, and that's my fear. Okay, fine, it's 10% now, but what is it going to be tomorrow? Fine, it's 10 units and up, but when are we going to get down to what many of the advocates are pushing for, where basically every apartment is based on some type of government regulations? That's my personal fear.
And even with respect to 10 units and up, I mean, I think the assumption is that it's a 20-unit building, a 100-unit building, but it's a collective total of 10 units. So you could have two, 5-unit buildings, or two 6-unit buildings, meaning 12 units. Then you're lumped into that category.
Okay. All right. So
And ultimately, if what drives prices is the lack of supply. So if we were able to infuse supply into the market, that's what would balance out the increases in prices, whether it's rentals or sales.
yeah, and right now another thing that I'm seeing is that a lot of the money that was in the rent stabilized building, they're basically saying, I don't want to be controlled. I don't want my rents capped, and they're coming into and competing against the 3 and the 4 family homeowner, which is typically your mid-size buyer. We keep talking about intergenerational wealth, but it seems as if, it seems like a lot of legislation we're trying to help people with is basically turning our society into a renter society, and that's something that I believe Hagar would be against, or you could.
Definitely.
I mean,
we advocated for that recently in DC because where there's capital gains tax, whatever the legislation, if it's going to limit generational wealth, and like you said, we're creating a generation that will not be able to build wealth like the previous generations, and there just isn't supply, and there's a lot of things hurting that. I mean, it's people who refinanced during the pandemic at very low interest rates. It's capital gains tax. It's a lot of things that are, there's the huge generation of baby boomers sitting in their homes. There's a lot of things preventing inventory from coming into the market, and any legislation that supports that is further hampering that generational wealth.
Is there any other legislation that you want to bring up that you think is important that people should know about as homeowners? Is there? I mean, I could go down the list. Squatters' rights. I have a whole list for you if you want.
Well,
the new disclosure form that just came out.
Well, with respect to the capital gains tax, there are many individuals who are holding on to their homes because they can't afford, they will still need to live in, let's say, a 55-plus community or something like that that is not inexpensive. But if they sell their home, so much of their proceeds will go to pay this capital gains tax. So not only is it not allowing inventory to be released to the marketplace, they will just stay in their home, most of it possibly paid off. They also will possibly lose their homes. And if they do, not only are we not creating generational wealth for the next generation, where there may be a whole generation that does not have the ability to purchase a home, you might actually take away that first generation that started building that wealth.
I mean, I've even heard discussions about they're trying to get rid of the angel of death, or they're trying to get rid of the step up in basis, which would significantly impact your children be able to live in the house that you bought and paid the mortgage off for. So there's a lot of slippery slopes out there, and I think that's something everyone should be involved with on a personal level, is their estate planning. One of the problems I see in the Bronx a lot is that people don't do the estate planning, and they have all these assets, and it ends up becoming a squabble between the family or just an excess burden. So we have 1:30 left. I just wanted to basically bring up one more topic, because I could talk about these things forever with you. But one thing to educate the public now, another issue is the new property disclosure form. Before in the hundreds of deals that I've done, no one ever filled out the form.
Correct.
Because it opened themselves up to liability. Now the property disclosure form or the statement is sent out with every contract.
Correct.
And it's something that if you want to quickly talk about, you're more than welcome to. It's something that you.
So I will plug again the importance and the need to lean into the association for any questions, changes in legislation that change the way you do your business. The property condition disclosure statement, as you said, is now required to be completed. Before you could waive that with the, at the bargain price of $500, that is no longer. So that is something that an individual would rely on their realtor to help guide them through that process, and that's.
Okay, so we have 30 seconds left. I just want to say thank you. I do want to say I'm proud of your leadership. I'm happy that you came here today, and people can get in touch with both of you. If you want to say your emails, you're more than welcome to it.
I think if you visit hgar.com, you can email us through the website, and you can also find our list of priorities on the local, state, and national level, and read up on them and support them, and contact your legislators to support things that would help the issues we discussed today.
Okay, and if you want to mention your website, you're more than welcome to, with R.M. Friedlander, one of the dominant commercial brokers here in the city, or with Keller Williams up in the White Plains office.
Sure, yes. I'm at Keller Williams, like you said, in the White Plains office on the residential side, and on the commercial side, I'm at RM Friedland, and my email address there is the best one to reach me. So that's cbauman, CBAUMAN, at rmfriedland.com.
Okay, I think that's all of our time for today. We could discuss a lot more, but I think that I think at least they talk about we talked about some of the important legislative topics that are out there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gregory.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guests, Greg, Linda, and Carmen, for joining us, and for our viewers for tuning in and checking us out. Keep following BronxNet TV for continued coverage. And don't forget, if you're not a member yet of the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, you can visit it at www.hispanicchamber.nyc. Again, that is www.hispanicchamber.nyc. You can also engage with us on LinkedIn at New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, all spelled out. And I'll see you next time for another episode of Meetings of the Minds in partnership with BronxNet. See you next. Ciao, ciao.